Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. November 27th, one day before Thanksgiving. Like to wish everyone from the Police Off the Cuff family a happy Thanksgiving. If you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, just a happy and healthy holiday season. A little festive, seeing the wreath on the screen. The case that, has been sort of troubling to everyone, and it seems more and more information is starting to trickle out, not to pour out, but trickle out. And that's the information in regards to Sheriff Mickey Stines. And of course, his defense is trying to get this case away from the charge of murder in the first degree, which is actually a death penalty case. And rather, they're looking to make this a manslaughter first degree. And part of it is a former Kentucky sheriff was experiencing extreme emotional disturbance when he allegedly fatally shot a judge, according to his attorney. Now, when we talk about allegedly, very difficult when we see video of this shooting, of Sheriff Mickey Stines shooting Judge Mullins, to even use the word allegedly. But that's the way lawyers speak. That's the way attorneys speak. So allegedly, right? Former Letcher County Sheriff Sean Mickey Stines is 43 years old. He's facing a first-degree murder charge for shooting and killing District Judge Kevin Mullins, 54, inside the Letcher County Courthouse on September 19th. Stines retired from the position following the deadly shooting. New details emerged in the case at a preliminary hearing in front of Jeremy Bartley. Stines' attorney argued that Stines was experiencing an extreme emotional disturbance and claimed not enough evidence was presented to substantiate the murder charge. This is according to his attorney. I think they've established probable cause for manslaughter first, but not murder, according to Stines' attorney, Bartley. He claimed that the shooting was not planned and Stines was experiencing extreme emotional disturbance at the time. It was not something that was planned and occurred in the heat of passion, according to Bartley. For us, the highest level of culpability should be manslaughter based on the partial defense of extreme emotional disturbance. Despite Bartley's objection, Chief Regional Judge Rupert Wilhoit decided there was enough evidence to send the case to a grand jury. Earlier in the hearing, more details emerged about the events leading up to the shooting. Kentucky State Police Detective Clayton Stamper testified that Stines and Mullins went out to lunch together along with several others earlier in the day on September 19th. I was told that judge made a statement to Mickey about, do we need to meet private in my chambers? That's all I was told, Stamper said. Stamper said officers told him that prior to the shooting, Stines tried to call his daughter from inside Mullins' chambers. He then borrowed Mullins' phone and attempted to call her again. Stamper's also said that Stines told officers they're trying to kidnap my wife and kid as he was taken into custody. This is such a disturbing case because, that may be the defense for Sheriff Stines and his attorneys. But when you watch on videotape, of this shooting, it is so very difficult to even use the word, as we heard a bunch of times, the word allegedly. Allegedly. It's on video. How do you use the word allegedly when it's on video?
Information tonight about what exactly went down in the Letcher County Courthouse that left a Kentucky judge dead. Video evidence from the trial shows former Letcher County Sheriff Sean Mickey Stines point his gun directly at District Judge Kevin Mullins. Mullins is seen on the ground with his hands up and turned away from Stines before the shots were fired. Stines has been charged with murder in the September 19th shooting of Mullins. The next step in the trial is for a grand jury to consider whether to indict Stines.
When you watch that, when you watch this, it is very difficult to use the word alleged at all. How is the word alleged used in this case? And we'll go into it a bit more. But folks, hold on to your hats. Hold on to your loved ones. Hold on to your cup of coffee. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone. The police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now, a word from our sponsor, Bet Online. This Thanksgiving holiday, why not head to the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting? Bet Online. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with constant real-time odds and action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA and college basketball, NHL to UFC and boxing, head to the website today to see why Bet Online is America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online, the game starts here. You know, folks, one of the biggest questions in this case from a legal perspective, of course, is this the defense is trying to say, oh, this is a manslaughter. This is not a murder. It's not premeditated. He lost his mind. And difficult to believe that, difficult to sell that to us again when we look at the video of Sheriff Stines shooting Judge Mullins. And I have the statute up on the screen right now as you look at it. And manslaughter in the first degree. A person is guilty of manslaughter in the first degree when with intent to cause serious physical injury to another person, he or she causes the death of such person or a third person. I don't think you can really argue that. Now, what the defense is trying to sell to everyone is subdivision B, with intent to cause the death of another person. He or she causes the death of such person or of a third person under circumstances which do not constitute murder because he or she acts under the influence of extreme emotional disturbance as defined in subsection 1A of KRS 507-020. So that is the underlying law of which his whole defense is going to be based on. This is not murder. He didn't intend to do this. Sort of tough to watch that video of Sheriff Stines shooting the judge and say this is not an intentional murder. That, well, we don't know. His defense is trying to sell the theory of extreme emotional disturbance. And that remains to be seen. How are they going to prove that? And these are some of the information that we don't quite have, all of it with us. But I always bring you back to this video
tonight about what exactly went down in the Letcher County courthouse that left a Kentucky judge dead. Video evidence from the trial shows former Letcher County Sheriff Sean Mickey Stines point his gun directly at District Judge Kevin Mullins. Mullins is seen on the ground with his hands up and turned away from Stines before the shots were fired. Stines has been charged with murder in the September 19th shooting of Mullins. The next step in the trial is for a grand jury to consider whether to indict Stines.
I mean, how many shots when you watch that? When you watch that, very difficult to think of anything else but an intentional murder. There he is standing over him, even before he left, going out that door. When he left and he was leaving, it's almost like, oh, are you dead? Let me give you one more for good measure. Let me fire one more shot at you because it doesn't appear that you look like you're dead. So extreme emotional disturbance, that's what they're going to try to sell to the jury. But what was it now? Now some information is starting to leak out that Sheriff Stines was having a problem at his home. He was asked by his wife and his daughter to leave. They wanted him out. So was there some domestic violence issues? And what we do know also is when the sheriff went into the judge's chambers, he tried to call his daughter using his phone. And then his daughter didn't answer when he called using his phone. Then he called his daughter using the judge's phone, and his daughter answered the phone. Was that the subject of the extreme emotional disturbance? Is that what caused Sheriff Stines to lose it? Because in his mind, did he put two and two together and say that in his mind, that Judge Mullins and his daughter, his 17-year-old daughter, were having an inappropriate relationship? And is that the source of what you may refer to as a temporary insanity moment or an extreme emotional disturbance moment? That is what the defense is going to try to sell to us. News Nation reported on this, and they came up with perhaps some new information in regards to this case. Some new information possibly of some problems at home.
That he's the shooter, the defense calls it a moment of extreme emotional disturbance and says murder is the wrong charge. They won't even concede to manslaughter. I want to bring in News Nation investigative producer Allison Weiner. So great to have you here. I know you've been digging into this, Allison. All right, the grand jury indictment was just a few days ago. Stines said not guilty. That was his plea yesterday, but neither sheds any light on the million-dollar question. Why? Why did this happen? What do we know?
Well, we now still don't know exactly why it happened, but I think the defense did give us a little bit of insight, pointing to the fact that a deposition that the sheriff had given just days before the shooting would be part of the defense. Plus extreme emotional distress. You could see where we're heading with this. I mean, it's going to be an insanity defense of some sort, which means also that the defense is looking at he didn't plan to go in there and shoot the judge, which again begs the question, then why did he? So I have to say that the people I talk to are confused. They know both men. Everybody knows everybody. When I was in Kentucky and I was in Whitesburg where the shooting happened, and I went, just sort of all over, they all professed to be in shock. They didn't understand why. But I think that we're beginning to see a little bit of details coming out. Not the stuff that you're seeing on Twitter or on social media, because everybody has an opinion about what the reason was, but some actual information I got from sources while I was there.
Yeah, I imagine you said everybody knows everybody, and it must be so weird for everybody to see their sheriff in jail garb and handcuffed and coming in. What did you find out about the sheriff's family situation right before the shooting and how that might be a factor? Because I know that you found out some good information here. So what do we know?
Well, it's really interesting, but several sources said that the sheriff was was kicked out of his home by his wife. They had some sort of a dispute,
Right.
the night before the shooting, and that was the reason that he was in plain.
We're finding out as a lot of this information was out, but not confirmed. So it's coming out in dribs and drabs here. Beverly Lawyer from the chat. Stines was kicked out of his house by his wife and daughter the night before. So that could be, of course, probably is connected to all of this. Pauline Buckles from the chat. If he's emotionally disturbed, then an inappropriate relationship with daughter might have been all in his head. Michael Edge, also his attorney, when answering questions, says it's related to the incident with the deputy and judge's chamber case and deposition sheriff gave in that case. Folks, if you're not familiar with that, there's a civil case against Sheriff Stines where one of his deputies was arrested and charged with basically sexually abusing arrestees who were coming up for bail or coming up for release, and he used his power as a deputy, and he was arrested and he was convicted of these charges. And as a result of that, there is a civil suit against the sheriff and, of course, the defendant in that case. And the sheriff had to give a deposition on that. And there's apparently this may also somehow be related to that. And we don't know exactly how, but it's all convoluted right now. But as the information comes out, again, in dribs and drabs, this was suggested very early on when we first started covering this case. But as the twists and turns and the defense comes in, we're learning more and more about this case.
In clothes because he wasn't able to have a uniform wherever he was, and that he showed up. When you see him in the judge's chambers, he's not wearing his sheriff's outfit, or sheriff's uniform, I should say. We also know that the sheriff on the day of the shooting had a lunch with the judge. And what gets left out of that story is the fact that there were other people at that lunch. And the sheriff attempted to bring up some subject. The judge stopped him and said, let's talk about it in chambers. Come by after lunch. The sheriff then, we know about his movements, at some point went to see his daughter, and she didn't want to talk to him. So he then drove to the courthouse and he went to see the judge. And we do know from the facts that, from what has been released, that we know so far, that he picked up the phone and tried to call his daughter from the judge's chambers. She didn't answer. Then he used the judge's phone and she answered. So we have a situation where the sheriff had, domestic issues at home. Clearly, he was kicked out of his house. There's been some dispute from different sources about when it happened, but my sources are saying it was that night before the actual shooting. And he was in a great deal of distress.
Allison, I want to go back to that lunch. The other people that were there that saw these two men eating a meal together, breaking bread. Did anybody say, was it heated? Was it strained? Did it seem normal?
They said it seemed normal. I asked some of the people that were there. They said it seemed normal. There was no sign of anything. But what we're hearing, about the sheriff's demeanor is a little odd. Not from that lunch, but from the deposition. I mean, that's why the defense is looking that way.
All right. So what about this pending civil case against the sheriff? How is that possibly related? Do we know anything more about that case?
We know a lot, and that's kind of where everything's going.
Okay.
The civil lawsuit, it's a civil rights lawsuit that was filed by a plaintiff who alleged that the sheriff knew or should have known that she was being, sexually assaulted by one of his deputies. And that he actually, the lawsuit says that he didn't properly train. He's accused of not properly training that deputy. And the deputy was trading, preferential treatment for sexual favors. And basically, we're talking about women who are in a drug, have drug offenses and are trying to get into rehab, not go to jail. And it's all based on one person who is in charge of their ankle bracelet if they get home detention, who can make a phone call and the next minute they're in jail. So it's kind of a terrible situation.
Thanks for watching.
Go to Georgia.
So we, again, some new information here. Well, I mean, not so new. It's just it has yet to be in previous reports to be confirmed as to what happened. So the connection between Sheriff Stines and Judge Mullins, I mean, they worked together for many years. They were friends. We're hearing they were friends. And then we have the relationship apparently the judge had with Sheriff Stines' daughter and his wife. And potentially there was a breakup going on or a domestic violence issue between the judge and his family. Excuse me, Sheriff Stines and his family. And the judge somehow was involved in this, had some kind of perhaps intervening, and did Sheriff Stines take great umbrage at that? Was that the source of his extreme emotional disturbance? And then when we connect it to the civil case of one of the underlings of Sheriff Stines committing these acts against female prisoners, it can all add up to what the defense is trying to prove to be an extreme emotional disturbance. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, in the right place. And if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button on the screen, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell, ring my bell. And if you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. And you can contribute to us by becoming a Police Off the Cuff member. And again, as I said earlier on the show, we want to wish everyone a happy holiday season. For you Americans, who most of our audience are Americans, many of you are from across the pond. And I know that you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, but we from the Police Off the Cuff family want you to have a wonderful and happy, merry Christmas and holiday season, whatever you celebrate. So that's from the Police Off the Cuff family. In the arraignment of Sheriff Stines, of course, a plea had to have been put in, and he did not plead guilty himself. His attorney pled not guilty for him. But the sheriff was in court, and this is what it looked like yesterday.
The sheriff, charged with murdering his friend, who's a judge, appears in court to enter a plea to the charge. I have new information in the case of the former sheriff, Mickey Stines, and where the case goes from here. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Mickey Stines made international news when he was arrested and charged with murdering his friend of many years, Judge Kevin Mullins. Now Stines has been indicted for murder of a public official, and he's entered a plea. I'll show you that hearing in just a bit. This case is not a whodunit, far from it. It's more of a why did he do it? And is the crime murder or something else? Stines shot and killed Judge Mullins on September 19th, and the crime was captured by security cameras. The case is absolutely unbelievable because Stines, the well-liked, now former Letcher County sheriff, who's supposed to enforce the law, is accused of breaking it, committing the most serious crime you can in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. That day, Stines and Mullins went to lunch together. It was something that they had done together many, many times over the years. Stines and Mullins were longtime friends. At one time, Stines had worked as Mullins' bailiff. The lunch came up at a preliminary hearing in October.
Are you aware of anything so far in your investigation that would tell us there was any issues at lunch between Judge Mullins and Sheriff Stines?
No.
Okay. But someone on behalf of the KSB has spoken to those witnesses?
Yes, they've all been interviewed.
And there was nothing unusual that had arisen during that luncheon?
I was told that the judge made a statement to Mickey about, do we need to meet private in my chambers? That's all I was told.
Do you know the context of
I do not.
what the conversation was before that they would need to discuss in chambers?
I do not.
The prosecution played the video of Stines shooting Mullins.
And were you able to identify the party that we saw in that video?
That was Sheriff Mickey Stines and Judge Kevin Mullins.
And also, who had the firearm?
Sheriff Stines.
And then Judge was also in his black robe.
Yes.
Do you know what portion of the courthouse that is?
That is the judge's chambers
And where's that located at, physically located?
in the Letcher County Courthouse.
Now, there was no audio of the video, so we don't know what was said before Stines fired.
And have you had an opportunity to review the video
I have.
of the prior incident?
I have.
And can you describe for us what happened immediately prior to the clip that we saw?
Sheriff Stines uses his telephone to make some phone calls. He then borrows Judge Mullins' cell phone and appears to make a call on that. And that led to what you just saw.
Okay.
Mickey
So it seems that when the sheriff made the phone call with his own phone and his daughter didn't answer, then he used the judge's phone and his daughter did answer. And that apparently enraged Sheriff Stines. And that could be the subject of the extreme emotional disturbance that the defense is trying to raise to make this case a manslaughter rather than a murder in the first degree. I just saw a Beverly lawyer in the chat. Stines went to see his daughter. She wouldn't see him. In judge's office, daughter wouldn't answer dad's call. Dad called from judge's phone to daughter and she answered. Then dad killed judge. Yes, Beverly, I think that was the essence of him losing it, really. That's I think that the defense is trying to sell this extreme emotional disturbance from the fact that did Sheriff Stines interpret that, or did he have information on his own of an inappropriate relationship between his daughter and the judge? Or, as we found out, Sheriff Stines had gotten thrown out of his home the day before. And was the judge involved some way, or did Sheriff Stines believe that the judge had something to do with this? I mean, that's some of the questions that we have to ask. Jane C. from the chat, this sheriff must have thought he'd get away with this. Else, in my opinion, he would have unalived himself. Not Jane. I mean, that the fact that he shot the judge in his chambers, and he had to have known there was a camera in the chambers because he was the subject of that civil suit where one of his underlings was inappropriately having, let's say, SA with some female prisoners or arrestees, whatever way you want to put it. So yes, that could be why, and the defense may be appropriate, why Sheriff Stines lost it. Went right into temporary insanity. Because they said when he was at a luncheon with the judge, there was no signs of any emotional disturbance. There was no signs of friction between Sheriff Stines and Judge Mullins. But the judge is heard to say, do we need to meet in my chambers? So they met privately. And what would the judge think there was any danger to him from his friend, the sheriff, in his chambers? But we all watched, we all saw what happened. And again, everyone talks about this case as to it's not the when, the how, the who, it's the why. Why? Why did this happen? Why did Sheriff Mickey Stines shoot Judge Mullins?
Speculation.
I was told that Sheriff Stines had tried to call his daughter, and he had tried to call his daughter from the judge's phone also.
So, have you obtained the phone records from Judge Mullins's phone?
I don't have those in my possession yet, no.
Have you issued a search warrant for them?
Yes.
Okay. And have officers confirmed that the sheriff's daughter's phone number was on Judge Mullins's phone?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
So that number had been called from Judge Mullins's phone?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, there have been questions about whether the phone number of Sheriff Stines' daughter was actually saved in Judge Mullins' phone. A Kentucky State Police spokesperson told me recently that Stines' daughter's phone number was not stored in Judge Mullins' phone. So Mickey Stines actually had to dial that phone number. Also adding to the mystery, what Mickey Stines said to law enforcement when they took him into custody.
He was mostly calm, I thought. I mean, I talked to him, but he didn't say nothing about why this had happened. But he was calm. He was kind of afraid that basically all he said was, treat me fair. That's basically the comments he made.
Okay. Did he also make a statement about, I didn't see it in the citation here, somewhere along the line I saw a statement being attributed to him about protecting his family?
I wasn't present, but when he was taken into custody, I was told by one of the other officers that were there that he made the comment, they're trying to kidnap my wife and kid.
That was a stunning comment.
So these are the things that give us pause. There's another side to this story that we are not privy to. We do not have all the information. There are some questions from the chat. Pauline Buckles said, so the daughter's phone number was stored in the judge's phone. No, that was just cleared up. The phone number wasn't. In fact, Sheriff Stines called his daughter, physically dialed her number from the judge's phone, and she answered. That apparently enraged him. That may have been the catalyst to bring him into what the defense is describing as extreme emotional disturbance. And that is what the defense is trying to say. Sell. KLW from the chat. I read a post, can't remember now where, that the judge was helping the wife and daughter get away from the sheriff because of abuse of the wife and child. KLW, that is very possible. And some of the information that's leaking out is sort of implying that. But again, confirmation, we probably won't get confirmation to any of this stuff until the trial starts. And these are the hearings that are occurring. He was just arraigned. They had the grand jury. He was indicted. But the information that that we will be all wanting to hear as to the why. We all want to know the why. Why did this happen? Why did Sheriff Stines go into the judge's chambers, call his daughter from his own phone? She doesn't answer. Call his daughter from Judge Mullins' phone and physically dial from Judge Mullins' phone. And she answers the phone. And is that what was the catalyst to enraging him into what the defense describes as extreme emotional disturbance? From the chat, his way of handling rejection, even when he brought that on himself, is to murder. He is dangerous. Pink Banjo, KLW, lots of probably going to come out was the sheriff's daughter and wife in court. Alex Reese, Sarge Stines knew the court intimately. He was a bailiff there for years. Yes, absolutely. And he and the sheriff, he and the judge Sheriff Stines and the judge were friends. Pink Banjo, they seem to be smiling. Pink Banjo, what do you make of that comment? Oh, treat me fairly. Look, now, if Sheriff Stines wasn't in extreme emotional disturbance and that was the catalyst to him shooting the judge, certainly getting a taste of being in jail can put you in extreme emotional disturbance. And he knows, don't forget, he knows all these law enforcement guys. He knows all of them. He's worked with them for years. And all he said to them was, treat me fairly. He doesn't want any special treatment, just treat me fairly. And when I watch the one, I'm going to put him up on the screen, Clayton Stamper, the detective, the state police detective, he seems to be struggling with his testimony. And I think the reason he is struggling is because he's friends with Sheriff Stines. There he is up on the screen. He doesn't seem to be able, he anticipates questions from the judge and answers them before the judge even finishes the question. I think he's just having a hard time testifying against his friend.
Kind of afraid that basically all he said was, treat me fair. That's basically the comments he made.
Okay. Did he also make a statement about, I didn't see it in the citation here, somewhere along the line I saw a statement being attributed to him about protecting his family?
I wasn't present, but when he was taken into custody, I was told by one of the other officers that were there that he made the comment, they're trying to kidnap my wife and kid.
That was a stunning comment, and it had people wondering what could have been going on in this small town. Kentucky State Police tell me they're investigating every possibility. In the background of this case is a civil lawsuit. Sheriff Stines had been deposed in that suit days earlier. One of his former deputies, Ben Fields, was convicted of raping and sodomizing a former inmate named Sabrina Atkins in Judge Mullins's chambers, where there weren't any cameras present when it happened in 2021. Atkins' suit accuses Sheriff Stines of ignoring the behavior. Stines' lawyers had previously told me that their client was receiving an outpouring of support from the community.
What I am amazed by are the stories of Sheriff Stines transporting juveniles and stopping at the McDonald's drive-thru to get them food and to take care of people who were, who were having difficulties in getting food and taking it to their house. I've heard from drug addicts and recovering addicts who attribute their sobriety and their success in life to Sheriff Stines' efforts. Now, that is important to us because, again, there is something, and we want to know what, and we're continuing to do our own investigation, but we, ultimately the Commonwealth has to give us the information to understand what would make this man who has served so honorably in his community to get to the point where he felt the only thing he could do to protect his wife and daughter is to take action on his own.
Now to today's arraignment and Sheriff Stines entering a not guilty plea to the charges. The former law enforcement officer walked into court in a gray jail jumpsuit, handcuffed.
We'll waive a formal reading.
The attorney was talking about all of the good deeds that Sheriff Stines, and what a good guy he was his whole life, and how many people he helped. And all of that may be true, Yes, he helped people. He was a good guy, There's an expression on the NYPD, and was one of my favorite expressions because it rings true, not just in police work, but in lots of work. And the expression was, 1,000,000 attaboys don't equal one shit. And attaboy basically is attaboy, good job, attagirl, whatever, attaboy, good job. But in essence, what it means is you can do 1,000 things right, but do one thing wrong. And all the things you did right are all forgotten. And this is a big shit. This is shooting and killing someone, and not just shooting and killing someone, and it's a mystery. It's on camera. So a million attaboys, his attorney can tell us that he walked on water and, and saved people's lives and did this and did that. But this is a gigantic shit.
Courthouse that left a Kentucky judge dead. Video evidence from the trial shows former Letcher County Sheriff Sean Mickey Stines point his gun directly at District Judge Kevin Mullins. Mullins is seen on the ground with his hands up and turned away from Stines before the shots were fired. Stines has been charged with murder in the September 19th shooting of Mullins. The next step in the trial is for a grand jury to consider whether to indict Stines.
This reporter, for some reason, keeps referring to this as the trial. It's not the trial. They were just hearings, but she keeps referring to it as the trial. And look, everyone makes mistakes, but it's not a trial. It was the hearings. And when we watch, I mean, can anyone watch the shooting and just think that, okay, he was under extreme emotional disturbance? Or will that erase every possible thing about this a defense to this case? Oh, this happened, that happened. He was under extreme emotional disturbance. Will anyone be able to actually think that and forget about this picture right up on the screen? This still of Sheriff Stines standing with a 9mm in his hand. And what is the judge thinking? With a cigarette in his hand, a cup of coffee in front of him. What is he thinking right there? Yeah, he's probably thinking, he's not going to shoot me. He's not going to shoot me. I've known him all my life. Why would he shoot me? Why would he possibly shoot me? I've known this man all my life. There's no way on this earth that he would shoot me. But guess what? He did shoot him. And is anyone, when this case, or if this case goes to trial, going to be able to forget about that picture? Legal-minded friends, my buddy Karen Cole, always good to see you from across the pond in London, in Britain, Great Britain. I know I have a terrible British accent. Wow, unbelievable video captured. Yes, and for anyone that's on, when this case does go to trial, for anyone that's on this jury, no matter what the defense says, will they be able to forget about that video? I think not. Sherry Murray from the chat. In my opinion, I think Sheriff was pissed off that his daughter didn't answer when he called her. But when he called her from the judge's phone, she answered, but still doesn't answer the murder he did. No, Sherry, it doesn't. I had some conversations about this case with people in the chat. And there were some people that thought if there were an inappropriate relationship, and we don't know if there was, but if there were an inappropriate relationship, that somehow gave Sheriff Stines permission almost. I'm not going to, maybe permission's too strong a word, but that gave Sheriff Stines sort of like an excuse. Let's use the word excuse. That he now has an excuse to murder the judge. Because did that solve anything? And I would say that again. Do you think that if Sheriff Stines could think about what he did, you think, and he could undo it, you think he would undo it, seeing what this caused, taking the judge's life? And again, we don't know all the inside information. Beverly Lawyer from the chat. Daughter was mad at the dad That's for sure. Daughter was avoiding the dad. Yes, absolutely. Jane C. from the chat, they might come up with a PTSD, job-related or prior military. They can, Jane, I don't think that there's any defense that can be raised by his attorneys that will lend credence to anyone on a jury saying, oh, yes, I totally get this. I can't vote for murder first degree. I'm going to vote for manslaughter. He was under extreme emotional disturbance. He was temporarily insane. Hey, maybe the defense attorneys can convince a jury that that's what happened. Pauline Buckles from the chat, the judge may have been counseling the wife and daughter how to leave Stines legally. That's very possible. And that could be the substance of Sheriff Stines' rage, that his friend was coaching and counseling his wife and daughter. And again, we don't know that to be a fact, but that is a possibility. Alex Reese, fortunately, I'm not in the jury pool because I'd resent even having to show up for a half day of jury duty to be excused promptly. Well, Alex, I don't know what you mean by that, but that's your feelings. JY, the judge's mobile called at the moment of homicide. Wonder who called. Beverly lawyer, first Stines went to physically see the daughter, not the wife. She would not see dad. Daughter wouldn't take dad's call. Took the judge's call. Again, yeah, that could be what totally enraged Sheriff Stines that brought him to do this. And we don't know. We don't know for sure what caused him to lose his shit, as they would say, right? What caused Sheriff Stines just to lose it and suffer the extreme emotional disturbance that the defense is alleging that caused him to shoot and kill the judge and make sure he was dead because he gave him one for good measure as he was leaving the chambers.
Not guilty plea at this time, Judge. And you're satisfied that Mr. Stines is aware of his rights? Yes, the nature and substance of this murder charge? Absolutely, Your Honor. Yes.
It's a formality, but Stines' lawyers filed a notice to preserve all evidence. The judge ordered Stines held without bail. After the brief hearing, Stines was led back to jail. Mickey Stines' lawyers say they're waiting on discovery to dig into the case and review the evidence, and venue could become an issue in this case. This happened in a small town. Attorney Jeremy Bartley also told me he thinks the federal civil lawsuit in which Stines was deposed before the shooting could provide some context about what happened, but it's more than could be explained in a soundbite. Bartley also said they've seen no evidence that there was an inappropriate relationship between Judge Mullins and Stines' daughter. I spoke with the Bartleys in October about the case. So many people are asking why. I mean, it's clearly on the videotape. He's pleaded not guilty in the lower court, but why? That's the big question. And you asked a number of questions under cross-examination yesterday, Jeremy, about the daughter, about her phone number being in Judge Mullins's phones. Where were you going with that line of questioning? There's been a lot of talk in that small town, but not a lot of concrete answers about what may have been the impetus for this.
Well, I mean, our investigation is still ongoing, and I would hope, given the incomplete answers we got yesterday, that law enforcement's investigation is ongoing. At this point, we don't have a complete picture, but what I think was apparent very early is that there was a sudden inflammation of of emotion that transpired in the moments just before the tape came on in the clip that we saw. And so this tape was edited to cut out anything that happened just prior. And we think the moments just prior will tell the whole story. I don't know at this point what ultimately was on that phone. They're examining the phones, but we believe that based upon the statements that our client made, just following arrest, as well as the indication that there was this exchange of phones or viewing of phones, that something in that moment made our client feel that there was no other choice than to do what he did.
So when we look at that tape, the videotape of the murder of Judge Mullins, that's not the whole tape. So apparently they edited it out, the conversation that Sheriff Stines and Judge Mullins had prior to the phone calls, which seemed to be the catalyst of what set off Sheriff Stines to the point where he took the life of Judge Mullins. Is that going to be an excuse? Does anyone see that as an excuse? Legal-minded friends from the chat, Karen Cole. I think I just answered your question. Why wouldn't he talk to his friend, the judge, first? He did. That was just edited out of the video that we see, of the video of the shooting, of course. So yes, he did talk to the judge first. Kelly Ward from the chat, be interested in the conversation they had at lunch. Maybe something the judge said set the sheriff off, possibly. Kelly, very astute. Yeah, that's very important. What were they discussing? There were other people at that lunch. And apparently the sheriff brought up a topic that the judge did not want to speak about at lunch, especially in front of other people. And he said, I think we should speak in private and you should meet me in my chambers. And that's how the meeting was set up. Placer 1000, regardless he committed murder, he won't see the light of day again. Sherry Murray from the chat, obviously the sheriff and judge wasn't as close as we thought because he would have known his character. Nora from the chat, QQQ, Bill, is it a fact all law enforcement are permitted to keep their guns? What security was in place for access to office of judges? Well, all law enforcement, Sheriff Stines was working. So, of course, he would be carrying his gun with him. He's a sheriff and he's working. Yes. Law enforcement, on the strength of them being law enforcement, when they retire from law enforcement, they can apply for a carry permit. And on the strength of that, there's something even stronger called HR 218, which allows law enforcement throughout the nation, if they qualify once a year, go to a shooting range, take a course, and shoot to carry in any state within the United States. So that is the law. JY, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. Very much appreciated. And guys, again, this is Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button on the screen. Give us a thumbs up. Ring that bell. Hit that like button and share us with your friends and your family. So this is a tragic case. So, and it's the very beginning. So we all know from following true crime, real crime, that, many would say, oh, there's video of him shooting the judge. Let's just throw him in prison for the rest of his life right now without a trial, without due process. No, that's not the way our system works. Due process. We all have a right to a impartial and fair trial. Yes, it would seem in watching that video that he's guilty as hell, right? Yes. But are there what we refer to in law as extenuating circumstances? That's why the law has many different facets to it, And I showed you the statute of manslaughter. And there is, in subdivision 2, something called extreme emotional disturbance that will somehow allow you to plea from a murder, intentional murder. So they're going to say, yes, he did kill Judge Mullins, but he killed him because he was under extreme emotional disturbance because of these factors. Will that cut the judge loose and have him serve no prison time? No. If he gets a charge of manslaughter first degree, the sentence would be 5 to 15 years in prison instead of 25 to life, or in this case, possibly the death penalty. So these are all the questions that we have. And again, it's early in this case, and we cannot, there's so much we don't know, but it's starting to come around and become clearer as to where at least the defense is going in defending Judge Mickey Stines.
So it almost sounds like you think he snapped. I mean, this was a reaction.
Well, yeah, and that would be textbook extreme emotional disturbance with the textbook example always of finding your significant other with someone else and in the moment. In the older case law, they refer to it the heat of passion. And that's pretty much the same line of reasoning that extreme emotional disturbance followed.
There was discussion that he said something about protecting his wife and daughter, or he was concerned about his wife and daughter. And then you were able to elicit that under the questioning of the lead detective, that the daughter's number, and she's a minor from what I understand, her phone number was in Judge Mullins's cell phone. I don't know if that would be unusual since they had been friends for many years. Can you elaborate on that for us? What was going on with the daughter's phone number being in Judge Mullins's cell phone?
Now, candidly, I believe that the officer testified that he believed that our client made a call from the judge's phone. So whether or not there was a call separate from that or whether there were any other calls, I mean, we'll have to await the cell phone records to determine. But there was obviously, if in fact it is true that what the officer said, that the daughter's number was dialed during this period of time, and you take that in companion with the statement that our client felt like his wife and his daughter were in danger, then we think certainly there is something there that is going to support our contention that Mr. Stines felt as though he had to act. Now, what that looks like objectively is subject to more discovery and more investigation.
Why were you asking about the apps on the phones and the different types of apps that can be used for communication? I mean, it seems to me you could draw an inference that Judge Mullins potentially may have been communicating with Sheriff Stines' wife or daughter. Do you know that to be true?
I have no objective facts that would lead us there or that would anything other than, of course, there's plenty of speculation. And so I'm just asking the questions. At this point, I'm asking the questions and trying to determine, A, what the objective truth is, right? But if you look at that statute, the statute is in reference to what our client's subjective belief was at the time that he acted. And so you actually, everyone wants to know the objective why, but for us, we want to know the objective truth. But the important thing ultimately for the trial is what did our client believe? And so to answer your question more succinctly, I do not have any basis now to make any conclusion about the phone number or any interaction. Other than it appears that our client made the statement that he was concerned about the safety of his wife and daughter.
Do we?
So again, according to the defense attorney, the whole case hinges upon what was the state of mind of Sheriff Stines at the time of the shooting and the why, what caused that. But the whole defense is what did Sheriff Stines believe was occurring that put him in this state of extreme emotional disturbance? Because that is the whole defense for this case. What was Sheriff Stines' state of mind in the judge's chambers here, as you see that picture on the screen? And that is going to be the entire defense to this case. Will a jury buy that Sheriff Mickey Stines went into extreme emotional disturbance. Temporary insanity, if you will. That's what we used to call it. But in the legal terminology, as you could see in the statute of manslaughter in the state of Kentucky, subdivision 2, and I'll put it up on the screen. Manslaughter in the first degree with intent to cause the death of another person. He or she causes the death of such person or of a third person under circumstances which do not constitute murder because he or she acts under the influence of extreme emotional disturbance. That is the law. That is the law in this case. And it doesn't matter what we think. It's what Sheriff Stines, at the time of this shooting, was that his state of mind, extreme emotional disturbance. And that's this case. So we're going to keep following this case because it's extremely, extremely interesting. And we can learn a lot, of course, about the statute of manslaughter. And will that excuse him from murder? No, it doesn't, but it gives him a lesser charge. A lesser charge than murder. So that's what we're looking at here. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Everyone that celebrates Thanksgiving, a happy Thanksgiving. And if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, have a happy and wonderful holiday season. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories.
One episode just ain't enough.